What are we going to be talking about today? Well, in one of my previous videos, we covered how to remove the over travel from this particular Glock's trigger, right? So what are we going to be covering today? We're going to be doing the opposite of that. We're going to be removing the pre-travel. So these have both been safety checked as evidenced by the pulled trigger. So we'll check it again anyway, but look, this has, you know, the full-on Glock pre-travel. So it moves quite a bit before you get to that wall. And this one does have the over travel stop in it, so it stops pretty nice, right? But you have all that pre-travel. What can you do to remove that? And this is it. Well, this isn't how you do it, but I'll show you. So this is just a factory Glock trigger with the over travel stop and what I'm going to show you for the pre-travel removed. Other than that, 25-cent trigger job just with a polish. But check this out. See how little that pre-travel is in comparison? And then over travel, very minimal, right? Compare that to the factory Glock trigger with all of this pre-travel, it's quite a bit different, right? So I'm going to show you how to do that. But disclaimer, again, with this one, especially since the modifications are a little bit different, I don't recommend anybody doing this for any reason. There's no reason that you would ever want to do this, right? So this is for educational and demonstration purposes only. I'm not a lawyer or legal advice, but that's my advice to you for this. So let's get started. First thing, obviously, you've got to take it down. You won't need your slide for this portion. You will need a couple of tools. You'll need a punch, you'll need a Dremel, and then you'll need yourself some pliers, right? And that sounds really strange, but you'll see why here in a little bit. All right, so, and I can't take credit for this one. This one I actually saw on the Pontoon Tactical channel. I'm gonna link their channel so you can watch his video. But same kind of thing, you know, again, I don't recommend you doing this because you're modifying the trigger bar. Well, not modifying, but, you know, modifying angles of the trigger bar. And, you know, lots of safety concerns can pop up. So don't do this. This is for educational demonstration purposes only. But we're going to be looking at this little tab right here because if you want to remove pre-travel, this tab, which the spring hooks on, right, the trigger bar return spring, this, if you push it forward enough, it's going to run into the inside of right here on your trigger housing, right? So, of course, you've got to play the game because there's a couple of safeties here, and I'll demonstrate. So if you look right there where the trigger bar is sitting, it's sitting on a shelf so that you can't push the trigger bar down. That is one of the safeties, obviously. So you don't want to defeat that safety, so you've got to make sure that you play in the safe zone here and don't go too far, right? So that's what we're going to work on doing. And of course, he had a set of pliers that were taped up. I'm just going to use them like so with a cloth and just do a couple of bends at a time. You know, it's kind of like when you're adjusting your tension on your connector, right? Except it's a little bit tougher. So when you see it almost straight with this line, that's when you know you're going to be pretty close, right? So then you have to put it all back together and test it, and then take it all the way back apart if it's not exactly where it needs to be. All right, so what has happened now is that I've adjusted it so far that the trigger return doesn't allow for the trigger safety to pop out. So that's where your Dremel is going to come in handy, because you're going to need to, and of course I don't recommend you do this, you're going to need to remove a little bit from the back of that safety so that it'll work. So let's get going. So I'm not going to show this on video, but essentially what you're going to want to do is, get my better pointer out here, is you're going to have to remove a bit from this little area right here so that this will still work as intended. But since you've bent this, it's pushing that trigger bar in a direction to where this will not engage any longer at its current length. So again, don't recommend doing this, so don't do it. You may also want to have a razor blade handy to clean up any of the little extra pieces that may result from this. All right, now we know that you are not doing this because I specifically recommended not to, but if you do, you're going to want to clean it up like that so that it has a nice clean ledge. Now we're going to put it back together and see where we wound up. All right, so now we can see that, well, I don't know if you will be able to see in there. We'll see where, there we go. See if you can see right down in here. It looks like it is engaged. We're gonna, of course, we just put it together, but safety check it anyway. Make sure that it works. Doesn't look like there's quite enough of a gap in there, because they say you should be able to fit a piece of paper. I just have this little thing sitting right here. We'll see. Nope, it doesn't fit. So we're gonna have to disassemble, remove just a tiny bit more from the little safety, because you don't want it hanging up and you also want it fully functioning, which right now I'm pushing on the sides and it's fully functional, but there's not really much of a gap in between. So when you pull the trigger, you can feel the safety kind of dragging on the frame. You don't want that. So we're gonna disassemble and take just a little hair more off of that. All right, there we go. That gap looks a lot better right in there. So if you look right in here, you can see it has a bit more of a gap. Let's check it out with the little plastic stuff, and it goes through there. So looks like our gap is in the safe zone, which of course you're not doing this, so you know none of this really matters, right? But now let's check it out. Remember that big long pre-travel? Now let's look at it. That's quite nice. Pre-travel only a couple millimeters. Over travel only a couple millimeters. So we'll go ahead and set it. Not very much over travel, not very much pre-travel. Look at that. That is insane, right? So there you go. There's the way that you're not going to do this, because I don't recommend it, right? For removing pre-travel, because it's messing with your trigger bar, right? Only qualified folks that know what they're doing and can, you know, look at the different elements that are involved, because of course, you know, you're dealing with fulcrums and safeties and things like that. And of course, you're going to want to look down in here, because where the trigger bar is disengaging the firing pin safety, you're going to want to look in here, which I already did, and make sure that it's not engaging that with the trigger sitting right where it's at. And if so, then you can modify, of course, the trigger bar, which we might get to in another video, but I don't do that. I set it to the point to where it's just on the edge of about to engage that trigger bar safety, but I don't want it actually engaging it. So it's right there on the edge. And as you can see, the factory safety for the trigger safety is still engaged. I checked the safety on the actual trigger housing, and it's still on the ledge so that you can't push it down, so the drop won't work as far as making it go off, right? And then of course you have the trigger bar safety, which you're going to have to look inside here, which it's not engaging it. It's going to be hard to tell. But yeah, anyway, that's all I got for you. Sorry the video went a little bit long, but of course, again, do not do this mod, because of course nobody would ever want to do this mod, right? So thank you for watching. If you like my content, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Thank you.